The views and opinions on Where Did the Road Go belong to those making them. Do not mistake allowing freedom of speech for agreement. This month's Where Did the Road Go is sponsored by the following amazing individuals: Greg Ross, Billuminati, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, and Michael Frisky. Thank you all for helping to make this show possible. And if you'd like to help out, become a patron at wheredidtheroadgo.com. It's only $3 a month for lots of extra content.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight I have, returning after many years, Mr. Mark Wyatt. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Seriah.
And you're with Janice this time.
Yes, I'm going to chime in from time to time, but we'll try not to talk over each other, but it's sort of a joint story. You'll see where it's going as we get more into the storyline.
Okay. All right. Now, Mark, you've been on only once before, right?
Yeah. Many years ago. When was it? 2016, I think, or 15 or 16. Yeah.
Yeah, early on. Early on.
Yeah, it was one of my very first. I can't even listen to it now. It's I don't listen. I don't like listening to myself anyway.
Most people don't.
Particularly that, because it's a long time ago, and I think I was quite nervous, but now I've done probably approaching 50 interviews now on podcasts, so I'm a little bit too casual now. Yeah.
I don't know. I remember your show going well.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I'd like to think so, but yeah. Okay, so.
But you've had a lot of stuff happen since then.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, it's like a lot of the things that we'd like to talk about tonight, I couldn't really sort of talk about this stuff when it first sort of started. It was basically in the very early days of what we're going to tell you about.
Okay.
And at the time, I couldn't really talk about it too well. I couldn't sort of go public with a lot of it, because even to my closest friends, because it's very personal.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very, I was going through a marriage breakup, and I'd met Janice and so on. So I didn't want to sort of talk about this stuff publicly. But I mean, I was on quite a few podcasts, but I always avoided it, really, what I'm going to talk about tonight with Janice, because, as I say, it was a bit too personal. But we feel now, sort of 7 years later, I think, roughly. In fact, it's more than that, isn't it? It's 11 years later after this all sort of began, really. Well, we'll explain as we go.
We're bad at math.
Yeah, we're confusing the audience already.
That's okay. With dates nowadays, everyone's confused.
Yeah. So really, all I'm trying to say, it was an evolving sort of, I say story, experiences, but it's all linked. And these things sort of happened at the time, I felt, in isolation. But when we look back at it, we think, right, I can see where this is going now. And it's sort of quite obvious now when we look back. How these things sort of clicked into place. Anyway, with that, I think we should. Do you want us just to give us sort of a background to it, and then?
Yeah. However you want us to do it is fine.
Yeah,
like a prequel, sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, okay. So look, I'll start by saying that sometime around 2013. I'll try and keep this brief, and Janice will be nagging me to keep it brief. Because I'll go off at a tangent. So, around about 2013, a friend of mine had moved down to where I was living at the time. I was in the far west of England, and I hadn't seen him for years, sort of just here and there. He was very much into the mind, body, spirit circuit. I don't know if you know about that. It's quite a big thing in England. Anyway, I'm not sure if it is over here, but it's not like the paranormal crowd like we probably are, I suppose, but it was more mind, body, spirit. So they're sort of trying to think of the sort of people that they who was big in that circuit. I can't remember.
Meditation.
Yeah, like meditation, guru, all these sort of self-styled gurus and all this sort of stuff. Anyway, he was into all that. I was into the paranormal thing, and we'd known each other on and off for years. His name's Morris. And I was actually working for him because like he moved down really fairly close, and it was just an excuse really to spend a day a week sort of, and we'd sort of spend a lot of a day chatting, you know. And he was telling me all about his meditation techniques and stuff, and he would go all over the world. He'd come over to California from England and sort of pay, you know, top bucks to sort of see some guru and be told some nonsense, basically sometimes. But he had a lot of money to spare, this guy. So he would try and teach me what he'd been taught. You know, he'd sort of say, oh, you've got to try this, Mark, and all these different things. And he was talking about these sort of manifestation techniques. And I was sort of dubious about these things, although I had tried something similar when I was in my sort of mid-teens. And maybe we can sort of go back to that later, but I don't want to sort of be diverted from the main course here. And I just thought one day, I thought, you know what, I was not that happy in my life at the time. My kids had sort of grown up more or less and just sort of lost that sort of family sort of thing, you know. They were all off doing their own thing or beginning to. And I thought, I'm going to try this manifestation thing. So I found a quiet moment and no one around in the house. And I basically, I feel silly saying this, but I did this. So I sort of laid on my bed and I did this thing where you hold your hands out like either side and you sort of feel the energy when you do that. If you sort of just, I'm sure anyone who does this knows, but you sort of feel that energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically was asking for, because he sort of said, oh, you just ask, his phrase was you ask the universe for whatever you want, you know. Right. But you've got to be really firm in what you say and you've got to be concise and so on. So I won't say what I asked for, but I asked for quite a few things. I mostly asked for things, my family, I think, my kids and so on. But anyway, I asked for all these things and I sort of forgot about it pretty much after that. Now, where do we go from here? So around about that time, it was a month or 2 months, something like that afterwards, I had an experience where I, excuse me, lose my voice, it's quite a long story. And again, we can probably circle back to this if we have time. But I had an experience where I was out in the early hours of the morning, driving up through a crossroads, and there was this huge owl. And I call it an owl, but, you know, it looked like an owl to me, but it was huge. Mm-hmm. I won't go into all that yet. I can come back to that. And I think now, well, I've sort of thought about this the last few years. I think that was connected to my manifestation, possibly, or you're trying to. And I think it was like a gateway to open up my future and it totally transformed my future. I mean, I was living in the far west of Cornwall. I was working at the time as a landscape gardener, and I was actually I did a stone circle for the Morris that we mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. That was what I was doing there, really. And it was so good. I'm not bragging, but it was so good. Well, okay, I am a little bit. But we used to get these coach loads of Japanese tourists go by because we were very near Tintagel Castle, which it dates back, I think, 1200 something. It's not, you know, Arthur never saw it because it was built 600 years later, I think. I might be wrong. It was after Arthur's time anyway. But that's where one of the places Arthur supposedly comes from. But that's literally just around the corner from where my friend Morris lived. So all these Japanese tourists would go by on their way to the castle, and they used to see the stone circle as they were going by, and all the Nikons were flashing as they went by. Because they probably thought it was the real deal, you know.
Right.
And we'd stand there smiling, you know. We're probably on some, you know, Japanese couple's mantelpiece, smiling by a stone circle somewhere, you know, in Hiroshima or somewhere. I don't know. Anyway, I'm digressing. So where were we? So yeah, I had this owl experience. Now, I don't know where to go with that, really. So,
well, I mean, first of all, just these first two things, the manifestation practice. The fact that you forgot about it is probably part of why it worked. I mean, that's Crowley's whole lust for result thing is do the ritual and then forget about it.
Yes,
That way it works its way into your subconscious where reality is created.
Right.
And the owl and crossroads, I mean, that's classic Hecate.
Classic, isn't it? Yeah,
classic Hecate right there.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Sorry, I missed that last bit. What did you say?
Hecate, the goddess.
You'll have to explain that one to me.
The goddess Hecate.
Janice seems to know, but I don't.
Goddess, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's and two of the things she's known for are owls and crossroads.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
But I know that Crossroads, I mean, I sort of wrote this all out. I'm probably better at writing than I am explaining things, but I went into all the research and I did the Crossroads thing. And when I was sort of putting all this down in writing, and yeah, I'm sort of going off subject already, but I mean, yeah, it was a place where the Pellers in Cornwall used to sort of, do spells and so on. And they used to hang people at the Crossroads as well, so that they couldn't, if they came back to life, the ghost couldn't haunt the village because they wouldn't be sure which road to take. I think that was the story.
So you should probably go to where that led, because right after, well, the way you told it, after the owl experience, shortly after that is when you got the idea to write your book.
Yeah.
So Wyatt's Weird World, which led you to the podcast and, to all that. And then everything sort of opened up from that. So you can almost see the things in a linear fashion.
Yeah, we can
with
now.
The manifestation, the owl, and then you writing, or you're just feeling that compelling.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting what Seriah just said about you forget about it when it was Crowley said, you forget about it, and then that's part of what. And Morris used to say to me, because I used to say, well, when I didn't really understand this stuff, I said, well, what are the steps to take? Because I was very sort of, sort of mechanical about this. I need to know how things work. So I needed to know, are there sort of 6 steps or whatever? And he said, Mark, just do it and get out of the way. Just let it go. Forget about it.
Yep.
And strangely enough, I've actually done that with you can write down things that you want for your family or for yourself or whatever. You write it all down and you put it away somewhere and you forget about it, right? And I did that once as well. And I was going to throw some clothes out to the Goodwill or something. And I went through all the pockets and there's a piece of paper and it's got all these things. And I think, oh, I've got that. Oh, I've got that too. And they've got that. And so, yeah, it definitely does seem to work. Anyway, so where were we? So I asked for all these things. And one of the things I had considered, I'd always wanted to write. And I sort of never really got around to it. And one of the things I asked for, one of the things I can talk about really, was that I wanted to sort of have the energy and commitment to actually follow things through. So, I started a lot of things, never really finished them.
Right. So
I feel I did get that. And one of the things I thought, well, I write. I had always a lifetime of experiences at that point. I think I was in my mid-50s or something, early to mid-50s. And I thought I can write. One of the things to get me going on the writing would be to write all these experiences down, as many as I could remember, in some sort of chronological order. And it would be just a useful experience to sort of almost like a therapy in a way.
Yeah.
But also something to leave for the kids, when they think, oh, he's crazy dad, look at this, I never really thought about getting it published at first. But then I was reading some of the stuff out and somebody, I can't even remember who it was, said, you should get it published. And that's how I ended up on talking about it. Well, first of all, I went to Jim Harold. I was on Jim Harold's campfire.
Yeah.
And I did a few others in the early days, but I should bring Janice in here because I don't think I've forgotten anything so far. But basically, that's where she comes into this story. So I was on Jim Harold and I was talking about my father's experience, just to confuse things even more. Where he saw this ghost of a gunpowder worker that was blown up. Long story. So I was telling Jim Harold about that ghost story, and Janice heard me. Am I correct in saying that? Yeah.
Yeah.
So here we go. This is Janice.
So I've had a lifetime of paranormal experiences too, and I've always been fascinated, possibly obsessed. And I've always been the weirdo in the room. But pretty much wherever I go, I'm the weirdo in the room who wants to hear everybody's ghost story or paranormal thing. I've always been fascinated, partly because of my own experiences, but I've just always been very curious. So anyway, I was a longtime fan of the campfire before I heard Mark on there, probably almost from the very beginning. No, but no, I'm always kind of been a big Anglophile too, but that again is a whole other story for possibly another time, because there may be sort of past life links with that, like really strong ones that Mark helped me explore, and maybe we can go into that sometime.
Sure.
But it was very interesting and transformative. But anyway, so I heard Mark on the campfire tell his story, and it was shortly after, I believe, Jim Harold forms this Facebook campfire group. And Mark and I at the time were both very active in Facebook. So I, of course, heard him talking about the story, and I was very intrigued. And it was, I believe, an ebook on Amazon. And so I was curious. So I downloaded the book. I think there may have been a link in the campfire notes or something. So I found it, downloaded it. And as I was reading it, there was a particular story that resonated with me so strongly that I literally I was reading, I believe it was on one of those Kindle devices. I forget what they were called now, but it was
the Fire?
Where you could, it was, oh my gosh. Yeah.
Notepad or something.
Yeah, it was like a notepad, but just for reading.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't remember what they were called now. They were really big.
It
was before iPhones, I think. So I couldn't really read on my phone. I was reading on this device. I literally read this particular story, and it brought back to me like a buried memory that I didn't even realize I was holding on to. And I literally kind of freaked out, and stuff doesn't usually freak me out because I'm so kind of immersed in it all the time anyway. So I literally had to set this device down. And I remember I set it down. I walked into the other room. I just had to get away from it for a while. And this particular instance was when Mark was describing, what was the story in your book? The magic carpet or something?
Yeah, I think it was like an early, I don't like to use the word abduction, but everyone sort of says, oh, that's an abduction. I don't really go there, but I did have these weird dreams which were like repetitive I don't know how often they would have been, but at least maybe once, twice a year. And they all felt the same. But I sort of, again, it was like that Crowley thing. I sort of forgot about them between them happening. So it wasn't until it actually started happening again, I thought, oh, I know this feeling and I don't like it, And it was like felt like I was being sucked out of my head sort of thing, like a pressure building in my head. And it was like I knew something was coming to get me. I never saw anything. I mean, like a lot of people talk about this and they say, oh, I saw a little guy in the room or was a team of little doctors or whatever. That wasn't my experience. I never saw anything.
So
that's the thing I was.
It sounds like yours was maybe just an astral projection.
Yeah, I mean, I did sort of the way I looked at it. I was almost like flying along the land. We lived in quite a small house, and I felt like I was flying along the landing, which is a very small sort of U shape almost, and then down the stairs. And then when it felt really fast. And when I got to the bottom, there's like a brick wall. And then just to the right of that, there's like a pane of glass with all these sort of separate mullion types. And I always felt when I was coming down, because it was always anew when I did it. It was always like the first time, but it wasn't, because I remembered like, oh, this has happened before. And I would I felt I was going to smash into the wall every time. I mean, I was only very, very young at the time as well. But every time there was like a quick curve and head out through these windows, through the glass, which it literally felt like just cold, I suppose, really. And I went outside and so on, but without being sort of going off into all that. That was what I think. Was that what you triggered you?
That sensation of sliding out like feet first outside through the door, being
I was head first.
Oh, right. Well, mine was like feet first. Okay. Well, maybe that, but that feeling of sort of levitating on out, and maybe it was astrally, and that's just how you travel astrally. Yeah. But when I was growing up, we lived in the country, and there were instances where my parents, probably 8, 9 years old, would hear the door close, and I'd come back in, and I've been sleepwalking, but I'd have no memory of that. I was,
I did that
all,
a lot. So
all
I
the
never talked about that.
The nosebleeds and
nosebleeds
kind
too.
of the classic things.
Yeah.
But just, I think possibly Mark and I have some sort of compared notes, and it's like, yep, that happened to me. Yep, that happened to me. Yep, that.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just that.
Yeah.
There have been many of the same types of things that we're kind of just, our own personal, but other people's accounts as well. I'm like, oh yeah, that's really familiar, but nothing ever hit home with me the way his story had done. And so at that point, and I've never done this with a writer before, but I was kind of like,
she stalked me.
Okay, I didn't really, but kind of. I was kind of a fangirl. Plus, I liked his voice. It was so anyway. So I emailed him, and I'm like, no. First, I contacted you on Messenger, and I said, because I saw you on the Facebook group. You were both in this group kind of chat forum
Jim
thing.
Howard's campfire group.
So we blame Jim really for all of this.
Yeah, it's all your fault, Jim.
Thanks for listening. We blame you. No, I think we've been on one of his podcasts before. We did blame him personally.
Yeah.
Good.
Anyway, so I reached out to Mark and said, "Hey, you're the guy that wrote the book," and it kind of went from there.
Yeah.
To the point where when I read this story, then I was like, I just have to tell you this, I was, really enjoyed your book, but this story in particular resonated. And we kind of started chatting from there.
And it gets weirder because I hope I'm not missing anything out, but basically I was going on quite a few podcasts, and as I say, Where Did the Road Go would have been one of the earlier ones I did, I think. And where do we go with this? So the writing the book. So if you think about the chain of events up to, so when I write the book, Janice reads the book and so on. And then I went on Conspiranormal, Adam. And this is going back some years now. And Adam, I don't know if I'm missing anything out, but Adam invited me to speak at the first Strange Realities.
Oh, yeah.
So that was 2017, I think.
No, that's
was
when
it,
you first.
Or was it 19? Sorry, I probably jumped ahead too far.
You jumped.
I've jumped ahead. I knew I would do this. But anyway,
first was the conference that you went to.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot all about that. So sorry.
I should have let you skip because.
Okay, so here we go.
I'm not proud of what I did.
So in the early sort of podcast appearances, somebody, I can't remember how it happened, somebody from an English paranormal group, I can't remember the full name, but it was a really cool guy called Neal Ward. And if you ever get a chance to get him on, he's a really cool guy. He's got some fantastic stories. He runs a paranormal group in, I think it's High Wycombe, which is sort of north of London. Anyway, he invited me to do a talk. I think he might have heard Jim Harold as well. I don't know. He wanted me to give a talk on the gunpowder ghost, basically. So that was like my first ever talk. So that came before Strange Realities, a couple of years, 2 or 3 years earlier, probably actually. So I gave this talk, and it sort of went okay. And then because it was so far, I travelled up from Cornwall, which to there was, I think, like 7 or 8 hours, something like this. So I went up with a friend, actually. And we were invited to stop over at, and again, I can't think of a surname, but a lovely people called Mena and Matt, who are really, really into all this stuff. And they're into horror films and all this fantastic house with all these sort of horror sort of souvenirs and things, like monster heads and Bigfoot in the hall and all this sort of stuff. Crazy house. And I was stopping over the night there. Now they had, at the time, Matt had just built this log cabin. So it's brand new and it's in his back garden. Now, High Wycombe is where the Hellfire Club was. It's sort of quite near that. And so after I've given my talk, everyone goes back to this house and it's just like this great gathering of all these people who are into the paranormal. And quite a few sort of people who are sort of names on the sort of British circuit. And we go into this log cabin and one or two of these other guys that weren't giving talks that night are giving their own little talks. And it's really laid back. It's a really great evening. They're telling their stories of, abductions and ghosts, all sorts of stuff. And while this is going on, or around that time, this lady, I can't remember her name, she was a blonde lady, probably a little bit older than me, I'm guessing. And she'd had a few too many drinks, I think. And she was extremely, well, I thought she was being flirtatious, but actually found out sort of later she wasn't. It's just the way she is. She was sitting next door to me and she kept, this is relevant, sounds weird, but she was leaning into me, like really leaning into me, into my space. And I kept trying to sort of edge away. And she kept leaning in further. So I was nearly falling off my stool, And I was thinking, oh, please, somebody save me from this. So this other lady, I don't know how it's happened, but some other lady who was there, they started having an argument. And it seemed to be getting out of hand. They were really going at each other. And that's sort of my memory of that. It sort of cooled down in the end, and it turned out later. I found out sort of a long time after that they didn't really fall out at all. They just like a good argument, And apparently they do it all the time. And anyone who doesn't know them just think, oh, they've fallen out, but no, not really. So anyway, I slept the night at this place, and then I think within the next couple of weeks or so, Janice you better jump in here.
It was not, well, at the time we were both very active on Facebook, as we said, and I wasn't stalking, but I did notice that you had not posted anything for a few days. So I sort of saw, well, when you did, you talked about you'd been at this conference and you'd done this talk. But prior to that, over the weekend, I had this really weird dream, and I thought it was a dream. And I've never, ever done anything like this before, ever. But in my dream, I found Mark in my dream. And it was just this really weird connection that I felt. And at first I thought, oh, it's just me. He's an author that I admire, I admire his writing. He might be kind of cute, but no way we're ever going to meet. It's just but it was weird. And again, never to my knowledge, other than the possible abduction thing, never had a spontaneous astral travel ever. So in my dream, I see Mark, I see the scene with tables, I see this woman that he just described leaning into him. I actually felt him being uncomfortable, but I was from the position like I was there beside him, I was there with him. And had sort of a familiarity that wasn't there in real life, but it felt real. Like we were a couple, and it was like, oh, he feels really uncomfortable. I should go help. In real life now, I would. Weird, yeah. I would say, hey, you know what? Maybe we should go get a coffee or something. Just, Anyway, so I felt that emotion coming from him, and then I could see the scene in the room and the tables, the way they were laid out. And then a little bit later, it kind of fast forwarded in my mind to standing next to him by a front door, where people were coming and going and greeting. And I could see out the window. I could see what the lawn looked like.
Yeah. And you actually went there a few years. Didn't you go there the year after and you recognized it?
I went with you, and I absolutely recognized. We stayed in the
same house.
Yeah.
Same people.
It was like, oh my gosh, I knew then. That confirmed it.
Yeah.
If I'd had any doubts that I really was there. But it was just, the weird little almost insignificant details.
Yeah.
But anyway, again, I think I emailed Mark at that point. It took me a couple of days to sort of work my courage up, because I thought, he's going to think I'm just a nutcase. And he's going to unfriend me, and I'm never going to talk to him again. But I had to know, because I was so curious. So I was like, I'm going to send you a little drawing. And I think I maybe visited you when you were at this conference. And so I just did a little crude sketch of the layout of the tables. And I described the woman who was talking to him.
Yeah, this was in the log cabin.
Yeah. And then you got it, and you probably thought I was crazy.
No, I recognized that the log cabin was all laid out with tables with snacks on and beers and stuff, And the description that she scribbled down was very similar. It wasn't perfect, but it was very similar to what was there, which was so strange. But
and in the description, I described the woman with the blonde hair leaning over you and those things. So that was kind of, that, and then that sort of led to more, emailing back and forth, and we just sort of became, kind of better friends, and shared our, just little paranormal happenings, and things and stories, because I loved stories from England, and Mark had, so many that weren't even included in his book, and I was just fascinated.
Thinking, I didn't put that in, In fact, the owl experience wasn't, I'm pretty sure it wasn't in there at all.
No, you didn't put that in.
But that's jumping forward a bit. We were at we've in America, we've been through quite a few properties, because we tend to buy a old place, and we do it up, and then we sell it. That's the plan anyway, and it doesn't always go to plan, but we've been through quite a few different places. And at the first one that I knew Janice at, it was a place called a Cobblestone. That's all I remember. But it was like a pokey little apartment. It wasn't very nice. It wasn't very nice at all.
We were in transitory spaces.
Yeah, we both were really. I'd had to sell my flat on a beautiful coast in Cornwall, and I ended up in the middle of Illinois. It's flat land. It's flat everywhere. There's no sea. There's no hills. There's no valleys. It's just flat.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah, be careful what you ask for when you manifest.
Yeah. Anyway, to sort of move on a bit. So at that particular place, we both experienced weird stuff. Am I jumping ahead too far? I don't know.
No. Really. Well, you might have left out the Conspiranormal conference.
Yeah, I was going to say
the very first one.
Yeah, well, of course,
that was in
that was great. Not just because it was nice to be asked, but Adam showed us all around Nashville, which we're forever grateful for, and we had a great time. We met a few of the other lads down in Nashville. Rob,
right.
Luke was fantastic.
Well, we met Joshua in person.
Yeah, we met Josh. Timothy Renner was there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a really great time. And yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like this whole experience, which probably started with me laying on the bed asking for stuff, in the middle of. That was like the gateway, or the owl was probably the amplifier, if you like.
Yeah.
That sort of set off a whole chain of events. So I was sort of reasonably happy where I was, but I was sort of just treading water, really, I suppose. And it sort of opened this doorway for me to come to America, which I'd never even considered, And sort of going off at a tangent, but we've travelled over a lot of America. We haven't done the East Coast at all yet, but we've been over the West Coast a couple of times, and we've been down New Mexico and all this. Florida. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I'm rambling. So basically, what I'm saying is it opened the door for me, opened the gate, and I've seen all this stuff I would never have seen. I've got all these friends in America, which I'd never thought I'd ever meet them, and now we occasionally run into people like Josh and Micah Hanks, and it's like it's a great life, So, just to get back to the weird stuff. So the first apartment, one of the strange things that happened there was, and I can't remember how it started, but I was stood by this side window of this bedroom in this little apartment one night, and there was this very, very bright light above the field. In fact, I'd forgotten all about this until Janice reminded me a few weeks ago, I think. And I was just standing there, and I was just reporting back to her what this light was doing, and
Well, you thought it was the moon.
Yeah, I thought it was the moon, but it couldn't have been the moon.
We couldn't have seen it from that angle at that time.
And there were trees all down the side of the spot. I couldn't have seen it. I couldn't have even seen it, the way it was.
But you were telling me, this bright light. And I'm like, go back to sleep. It's fine.
And as you know, Seriah, because we hear this all the time, that these weird things happen, and it's happened to me in many ways. And it's like, that's weird, but I'm going to go back to bed now.
Right.
Yeah, it's so strange. So that happened. Janice had weird stuff where there would be like a figure in the room.
Possibly the Hatman. This was when you weren't there. You were in England. I was
it's like
there
a bingo
alone.
card. We've got it all, haven't we?
Right, yeah. We got Hatman, we got UFOs. Let's get just right on the offset. Maybe preface this with get your paranormal bingo cards out now.
Yeah.
And we can play along. Anyway, so I was alone in this apartment. Mark was in England, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I just looked up, and classic Hatman. I didn't have the sleep paralysis because I was so terrified. I thought it was a real person. I thought I was going to be murdered, and I got up, ran out of that room so fast. I crashed. I forgot where I was. I crashed into the wall, almost broke a mirror, bruised my face. It was ugly.
Yeah, it's but
it wasn't sleep paralysis because I could move.
Right.
And I did not. I mean, I was afraid to go back in that bedroom because it took me a little while to work up the courage to go back in there and make sure that no one had, in fact, snuck in my apartment. So anyway, it turns out, nothing, no one, obviously.
But that led into, I used to hear, and I still do, I sound like a crazy guy, but a lot of my stuff has always been like clairaudient. I hear voices.
Mm-hmm.
A little yellow van will be around for me soon, I think. But I hear voices quite a lot, And I still do, actually. I still get this occasionally.
But that's where you heard that voice, and that was before I had.
So I had this.
So we had the light.
It was an American voice. I was in Illinois, so I suppose it's not unusual. And he was just telling me his name. I was just sort of half asleep or asleep, and I could hear his voice in sort of by my ear. And I don't know why they bother with me, because I never remember names or anything. I'm terrible with names. If only they knew. But he was giving me this name, and it had that initial in the middle. And I think it's a very American thing where somebody will be like I might get this one, like Dwight D. Eisenhower, for example.
Right.
So they sort of put, well, as I see it as an outsider, they sort of put an emphasis on that initial in the middle. So with me, I would say, my name's Mark A. Wyatt, like that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it sounded like to me, but I can't remember. Even in the morning, I could not remember what he said, but I did remember the emphasis on the middle, and he was trying to tell me his name. And then Janice had a similar. What was yours?
Mine this wasn't scary, but again, Mark was away. I can't remember if it was before or after the Hatman, but that presence felt evil, that it was very scary. I was terrified. This other voice didn't. It was more like, hey, and it was real casual, and it was a male voice again. And it sort of said, there's a tombstone very near you.
Near you, yeah.
Just like that. And it was just weird. I was like, okay. In that sort of half awake, half asleep state, it didn't seem like a dream. I've had voices sort of, preempting sleep before, so it wasn't a new experience. I just thought, well, that's interesting. But we did, this apartment was sort of on reclaimed farmland. And I know in the area, kind of across the road, they were doing a new subdivision. And before the houses were in, we used to walk our dog over there. And we saw where there was some rubble, there were some structures there. So we thought possibly the same thing had happened when they made these apartments, because they were probably built in the 80s or 90s.
Right.
They were kind of just thrown up and, slab floors and those types of things. So they don't dig too deep. There could have been a grave there, or multiple graves there. People just, sometimes, lost to history. So many graves
like
are.
Poltergeist.
Right.
Thing,
yeah, I'm not saying it was a graveyard, but,
No.
Sometimes I've been to places in Illinois where there are tombstones in people's backyards. Just, people buried their relatives on their land, especially if you had a lot of land and it was farmland. There are, random little cemeteries all over the place around here.
Yeah,
so
I think there was also a tradition of burying them around certain trees.
Oh,
right. Yeah.
I only know this because the band Belly had a song called Feed the Tree. And one day I'm like, what the hell does that mean? And apparently it means being buried under the family tree when you die.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
That would be quite awkward with all the roots, wouldn't it?
Well,
depends how big the tree is when you're doing it.
Yeah. You're helping the tree grow. It's, they do have, I think, things now where they do sell, relatives can get their relatives' ashes mixed with compost, and they can plant them with a tree. So that's sort of a relatively new, old tradition, maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, that we think we probably figured that one out just by, that explanation. But then we moved from there. And then we did live in a camper for a while. Sorry, we weren't kidding when we said we weren't living down in a van by the river, but it was close at a certain point. So I bought a camper, a big camper, because I was sort of feeling unsafe in that apartment complex for like real human reasons. There had been sort of a peeping Tom type prowler around, and I was nervous being there on my own. And I was trying to get a property sold that I co-owned with an ex-husband, and it was a bad situation.
So anyway,
he was not cooperative.
She put this trailer.
So I put a trailer on my son. My son has some acreage, so we were living.
Stuck it behind his house.
Yeah, we were living. It was a lovely.
It
trailer,
was beautiful. Yeah.
And it was relatively new, but the previous owner had passed away, and we think that previous owner may have come back and visited from time to time.
Yeah.
He would mess with the radio, and I'd be off at work, and Mark would tell his version.
Yeah, so I was writing, I think I was doing the Cornish books for Spirit of Cornwall, and I have to sort of get in the zone, and sort of I'm immersed in it. So I'm sat in this trailer right by the window with one of those little tables that I have, and I'm really into this, and I don't have music on when I'm writing. It just distracts me now. So it's just silent apart from the birds singing outside and stuff. And then all of a sudden, I mean, I can't remember exactly what song it was now, but it was always American rock, 50s rock and roll. And it would just come on at full blast out of nowhere. And it was always like Little Richard or Elvis or Eddie Cochran or something like that.
Right.
And the camper, it did have a sound system.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
And you could set it on alarm, and we checked all that. There was no alarm. In fact, we turned the whole thing off.
Yeah.
I don't think you couldn't unplug it because it was integrated, but we checked it for alarms because that was our first thought.
Yeah.
We thought there had been an alarm set. We hadn't set it.
Yeah.
And the whole system had been shut down.
It happened quite a few times, and I think it was about 3 times. And by the I'm not. You did remind me at the beginning not to swear, so I'm not going to swear. But I actually lost my temper the 3rd time because I nearly. Well, I'm not going to say, but it was such a shock to the system because it was so loud and just like I don't know. I can't even remember what the song was, but it was all the thing I had in common was they were all 1950s sort of rock and roll stuff. And now this guy, I never met him, but Janice did. And did he tell you that? I think, or was he?
No, it was his son, I believe, because I bought it from the son of the gentleman who had passed, who had this camper, and it was just his pride and joy. And
but he liked 50s
and
music.
He loved the 50s because they told me a little bit about him and how much he loved the camper. When I purchased it.
So we think he did visit us occasionally, and he liked to freak me out.
Music. I think he just wanted you to appreciate the 50s rock and roll.
Yeah, I don't mind it, but not at that volume, out of nowhere. So, Anyway, it didn't happen again.
After you told him off.
So are you okay with just these hearing it because it's sort of chronological, really?
Yeah, no, it's fine.
I don't want to sort of bore everybody, but
it's not boring to me. It's interesting.
Okay. So the next one we went to was a lovely old house. Like I say, we sort of buy them and we do them up and we move. Well, that's what we try to do after we got it nice. Yeah. Anyway, so we get to this place. It's in, I'll say where it is. It's Springfield, Illinois. And it's a beautiful old house. I mean, you can tell me the age of it.
Was it around 1912, I think?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It was beautiful, the old woodwork.
And it just needed a lot of loving care, and we gave it that. It was beautiful when we left it. But the problem with this place was I never, ever felt comfortable there, ever. I mean, I just could not sit there of an evening and relax. There was always the thought that something was watching you.
There was a very watchful kind of disapproving.
Like old ladies sort of, they didn't like my hair and they didn't like what we got up to, and you know what I mean? It's like, I just felt that they didn't approve of me or us. It was a weird feeling. And then sorry, after you.
Sorry, so I was just going to say we had friends. We still have these friends. Oh,
yeah, I forgot that.
They actually heard like laughter, like women chatting and laughter that wasn't us. They're both sensitive. And then Bill was having a conversation with someone in the basement.
Yeah.
He was Bill he's gone now. He passed away several years ago, but he was very magical, very Wiccan, but he was having a little trouble getting around at this point, but he made it a point to go down this rickety staircase down into the cellar and had a kind of a 10-minute conversation with someone down there. And he never said what it was about. He never would say, but we think he was telling someone to kind of, go easy on us and just, we're just there, we're not going to hurt them or try to drive them out. But he never did say, but he was definitely having a conversation. So we knew what we were feeling wasn't just our imagination.
Yeah. Right.
And then we had instances of a little bit of light poltergeist things where
the phone the first day we moved in.
The phone flew across the room.
Yeah.
My daughter's fiance actually said something a little inappropriate.
Yeah.
And
he was doing that goading thing
scratched.
that you should never do.
We wouldn't ever condone that. But they did not were approved of Jordan, especially.
Yeah, he was very, he was messed up. His poor face was just scratched.
Oh.
We never had that at all, but he did, yeah. I saw what looked like a lady sort of climbing up a staircase that wasn't there. So, like, if you can imagine sort of seeing a shadowy figure, but it was sort of going up slowly at an angle, like a stairway.
But yeah, the house had
that was very brief sort of glimpse of it.
But that, just to corroborate that, though, the house had that sort of landing where it had been remodeled and re-remodeled, but back in the day, you could see where sometimes there would be a landing and one way would lead to the front foyer, which, one way did, but if you carry on, you could go up to the landing, down another staircase, and you'd end up in the kitchen. It was sort of like a shortcut or back stairway.
Yeah.
And I think probably what you saw was someone going up a back stairway that had been there at one time, because you saw it in the kitchen, right, where that would have been. So.
Yeah, but I mean, there were sort of countless little things, and just nothing spectacular really. That place, really.
Well, it was the scratch. I had
the man that walked into your bedroom.
Right, yeah.
That.
It was, well, he didn't really walk in. He sort of peeked around the corner, and it was weird because I was scheduled to leave actually the morning before for a flight to go to England, and my flight got canceled, so I ended up coming back home. But the next morning, my flight got rescheduled. But before I left, someone came and peeked around the door. And initially, I thought it was one of my kids, which was weird. But I thought maybe they thought, just goes through your mind really fast.
Yeah.
So maybe they thought I was going to miss my flight. They were worried about me. They came to check on me because I didn't answer my phone. But someone just came and peeked around the door and said, "Oh, you're still here." And I was like, "Yeah." And then nothing.
Yeah.
And no one. It definitely wasn't my daughters. My door was locked. Couldn't have been a real person. Like, okay, they thought I was leaving. So they thought they had the house to themselves, apparently. So, yeah, the ghosts must have looked forward to us being away, I think, so they could just do what they want.
Have a party.
Have a party, yeah.
They were just being sarcastic because you were still there. Oh, you're still here?
Right.
Yeah, weren't you leaving?
Still here? Time to leave. Come on. Anyway, but yeah, that was an interesting place. But it was in beautiful shape, and we sold it. So we're really proud of that renovation.
Yeah.
And we think we definitely left it in a much better state than we found it in. So that was a good feeling. And then the next property, it was a little less active, I think, but you had a lot of auditory things there.
Yeah, lots.
And then we had the thing with Hannah, and then you finding the Harley sweatshirt that corroborated that as well. So we had other family members who were a little bit sensitive too.
Yeah, that was so we had a loft, quite a long loft, and it had like a window at the front where you could sort of look out, and it was quite a busy road. And when we first, I think within a few days, I'd gone up there because you always want to look in the loft, and I found a Harley Davidson jacket, and was it too small for me?
No,
I can't remember
you just didn't. Oh, you were going to throw it out.
Yeah, I love motorbikes, but I'm more Triumph than Norton.
I was like, "What'd you do? You threw it away?" No, so I went and got it out, washed it.
And I didn't know that one of her daughters is really into Harley Davidson Merc stuff. So we cleaned it. I can't remember what we did, but we gave it to her, not really thinking about it. And then we had activity in the loft, like banging and crashing, just random. And I had found loads of old beer cans and bottles just sort of chucked randomly by this front window. There was like an area where you could see. Yeah, there's like hardboard being put down. Someone had been like a little lookout for like a hangout spot. Yeah, for young lads, teenagers or whatever, or bikers. Right. And yeah, we used to hear a sort of random movements up in the loft. Footsteps, definite footsteps. Anyway, so I took up a bottle. I think I took up a bottle of beer and basically just sort of spoke to them when I was up there and sort of said, I'm sorry about the jacket. We didn't realise that you still wanted it or something like that. It's a long time ago. And I said, I hope this helps. And I just sort of left a beer. And we didn't have any activity for a long time, did we? I don't think we did. Down after that. There were lots of little moments like that. The weirdest one, the creepiest one. We know a guy, one of our friends, called Larry Wilson. He's an investigator, like paranormal investigator, and he's really, really good at it. He's like used to be a private investigator, and he sort of applies those skills, and he's got he's got balls of steel because he'll go into places that I wouldn't even go into in daytime, like, no, I'm not going there. And he's had so many strange experiences, but he warned us. We went to this place called
Williamsburg Hill.
Yeah, Williamsburg Hill. It's known locally as Will Hill, and it's I don't want to get into all that now, but it's really well known for like really strange activity, like just everything really.
Yeah. Larry's written about it too.
Yeah.
Larry's written a few books.
Yeah. Larry Wilson, if anyone's interested, he's
on Amazon.
He's written quite a few. So he warned us. He said, "Well, look, just be careful if you come out." And he sort of showed us around, told us all the stories, and he said, "Just be very careful and do your cleansing rituals when you leave." And we forgot. Of course, we did. And
well, nothing really weird happened.
No, not that when we were there.
The only thing I had was that weird sensation where you were talking to Larry, and I was just sitting, just sort of in the cemetery in the graves, and it was really peaceful. And I just sort of heard a voice in my head that said, "Oh, just lie down and rest for a bit. You can, you just relax." And rest for a little bit."
Tell them the story about the little girl who's there with her mother.
Oh, yeah.
This wasn't anything to do with us, just one of the stories.
Hilarious stories. Who said
the little girl was running around playing.
Right. And came to her mother and said, those children underground want me to come and play with them.
No, I think what happened was.
What happened was, that's the way I remember it.
Yeah, no, it was, she'd seen it, this little girl had seen an old lady. And the old lady had said to her, "Do you want to play with the children?" And she said, "Yeah, where are they?" She said, "They're underground." And she went back crying to her mother, and the mother was like really angry. She thought it's this really nasty old woman, But there was no old woman, So,
yeah.
But
I've had just so many experiences there.
Yeah.
And apparently it's the classic. It was an old Indian burial grounds, and the settlers had buried, had a cemetery there that I believe dated back to like the 1800s. And a lot of it's been sort of reclaimed by nature. It's just out in the middle of nowhere. It's the highest point. I can't remember the town it's by. It's by a tiny village that sort of has a very weird vibe. It's on the way to Shelbyville. We go past it when, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. You can edit this part because we're waffling. Anyway, it's literally out in the middle of nowhere, and it's like flat farm fields, and all of a sudden it's this big hill. And so this is where the cemetery is. It sort of feels charged, I guess. Kind of. And when you go through the little town, it kind of has a weird vibe too. But anyway, so we go way up in this windy road. Larry had to come show us the way to get there. So when we get there, Mark was interviewing Larry for his podcast. And then again, I sort of went off on my own.
An episode on Cuckoo Town with Larry Wilson. It's worth.
Yeah. So you'd be able to hear that if you're interested, or your viewers are.
Larry talking about
right. So he goes into more depth with his accounts and the things he's experienced there, which are numerous. Our part of it is, like Mark said, we forgot to cleanse. And a couple days later, after we got home, we both got really, really ill. I mean, we missed, this was in the fall. We were ill so long. We missed Halloween. We missed the beautiful fall weather. We were so mad. But after that, we started experiencing also like little random poltergeist activities and things. You heard your voices.
Well, you got tripped over. That was
we both got tripped by something that wasn't there in exactly the same way.
It felt like, if you can imagine, I mean, we had shoes on at the time, and
we had
felt
socks.
like something, to me, it felt like a fishing line, but heavy, really heavy duty.
Yeah, maybe more like piano wire.
Yeah,
or something.
like hairy. That's what hairy. And it was between my toes. It was like something had snared me between my toes, even though I had shoes on. And this was after you had it happen first.
Yeah, I had it happen, and like a few days later.
Went over.
Yeah,
there was nothing there on the floor. It was like a wooden floor, which we.
Yeah, it sort of seemed to be like in the dining room area, and so I also had I was making a little scarf or something, and I had my crochet hook and some yarn and everything all together. Crochet hook stuck into the the little ball of yarn up on a shelf. And I think it was during the night. We had just gone to bed, and we hear this ping. And so I get up, look around, and this crochet hook had flown from the shelf to the middle of the dining room floor, just on its own. So, and was that when you heard that voice and the doorbell too?
Oh yeah, that's another thing I forgot. So in the middle of the night, at some stage, the doorbell goes. Now I've had this. Yeah, I'd be interested to know if anyone else has ever had this experience. But this has been one of the ongoing themes I've always had. But it's just like a little thing, and I sort of forget about it until someone mentions it. But I'll hear a doorbell in the middle of the night, but it's never the doorbell we've got on the house at the time, wherever I am. It's always just like, and it's like muffled. It's like a muffled bell. So I wake up and I think, well, I'm sort of half awake, and I'm thinking, and I looked at the time or something. It was sort of around 3-ish, I think, and I'm thinking, what sort of person comes to the door at 3 o'clock? Pop burglars, And then I hear a voice, a male voice, alongside me, literally alongside me. And what did it say? He said, are you going to get it? Are you going to get that or not? Or something like that. It was like a sort of, like they were taking the piss out of me. Like, well, are you going to answer that or not? I can't remember the exact words now. But yeah, just really odd things. And one other thing I remember from that house was another sort of early hours thing. I sort of woke up and I had this, and I can't do justice to the way this felt, but it was like a sense of dread. I didn't see anything, didn't hear anything, but there was just this sense of dread in the room, just like the worst possible feeling of doom, just doom.
Yeah.
And I can't explain it. You know if you felt it. It's like, just like I'd been sentenced to sort of just be in this, little black box or something the rest of my life forever. It's like something, I think something was putting that on me, because I have sort of had, they call it masking or something, I think, where a spirit will put their feeling onto you, just briefly.
Right.
Like a little possession.
Yeah, a mini possession almost, yeah.
But it's
and it sort of passed. I mean, it wasn't my feeling. It was like something had put it on me, and I've never had that since, and I don't want it again. It was horrible.
I imagine.
We had that closet in the front room.
Yeah,
it was just.
There was a voice with that.
It was freaky. Well, I never would open it at night. I just couldn't.
Yeah.
And then one night I had to get something out of it, and as I opened the door, I just hear this. Like a woman just like really angry, just like
can't you leave us alone?
What are you doing?
And I had the same thing.
Well, you heard it. You thought it was me.
Yeah, that's right.
And I just closed that door.
Yeah, I was on my way into the room. She's in the room.
Was it me? I came rushing.
Yeah, I heard it really clearly.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. That was weird. And you used to see things going down that hallway too.
Just like shadowy sort of things.
This house was. Probably.
That was about the same age, I think.
It was a little bit newer. I think it was 1920s, late 20s by the architecture, I think. And it had a series of, it had an owner, but it had a series of renters. It was a rental property before we acquired it. So again, we refurbished it. We turned it around. We made it beautiful and left it in much better state than what we found it in. And then we found this place.
This place is relatively quiet, actually.
Yeah, this place was built sometime in the late, we're not even sure. Well, it was a minor shack.
1910-ish.
It's a very small town. It was a minor shack, and it's amazing. It's still standing.
Yeah.
It's very, very old. Someone actually passed away in the living room, kind of like where we're sitting now.
Yeah.
But we hardly ever have, I should knock on some wood.
Yeah.
We hardly ever have anything happen here. It's absolutely the quietest.
Well, we occasionally get sort of like the old cold tingles, and you think, someone's visiting us.
Never anything.
But that's
flying, it. No, really scary things. Yeah. Well, you did see a shadow.
Well, we got to take a break real quick, so we'll come back and talk more about this.
So we'll move on. Yep.
Quick mid-show break here. Contact info. And then a recommendation. Contact info, of course, is wheredidtheroadgo.com. Everything's there. Social links, all the shows back to the very first one. And we're coming up on the 12th anniversary very soon. If you want to send me a story for a Listener Stories episode, it's stories@wheredidtheroadgo.com. As for a recommendation, I'm going to go with this podcast, this fiction podcast I just started called Shelterwood. It's on Bloody FM, and I've listened to, I'm on midway through episode 3. It's not amazing, but it has potential, and it's been an entertaining listen so far. The blurb here says, Shelterwood, a suburban gothic, is a docu-horror podcast. It's not really a documentary, but it's done in the style of a documentary. Written and produced by Stephen, I'm not going to try to say his last name. Join one man's quest to find his long-lost sister in an infinite, monster-infested suburb beyond the Vale. Shelterwood is one part gothic, one part found footage, and 100% terrifying. It really hasn't been terrifying yet, but it's quirky and weird. And like I said, it's been pretty enjoyable so far. So, yeah, if that sounds interesting to you, give it a shot. You may enjoy it. Back to the show. You're listening to Where Did the Road Go? And I've been talking with Mark and Janice. And we were up to your current abode. How long have you been there?
Just over a year. We moved in a year ago, in November. So just over a year now. So I just wanted to reiterate and maybe just sort of say that I think everywhere we have ever been together, Mark and I separately seem to, for whatever reason, maybe it's just our interest, but sort of attract paranormal because, it's always been a component of my life and Mark's too from a very young age. So I think together we might be sort of amplifying that, whatever that vibe is. So pretty much resigned ourselves to, no matter where we are, there's going to be spirits around. I think the difference between where we are now and where we have been in the past places that we have refurbished and sort of done a slow flip maybe. I think the difference is here. A friend told me, she's an astrologer, professional astrologer. She told me before we bought this place that she said, I'm getting that whoever they want you to have this, they are so pleased that you're going to love this place and turn it around and save it. And I think that's the difference. Before, whoever was there, the spirits of the place, even
we were intruding.
We were intruding. We were not welcome, even though we weren't harming, we were helping. They maybe, didn't see it that way or just wanted the place to themselves, but, in reality, that's not going to happen. You're going to have humans there. But that was just maybe to sensitive people, they would have sensed it. Maybe, people who don't sense it wouldn't have gotten that. But we did sense it. We did get that vibe. But here it's different. And I think that's the difference, that whoever is here sort of approves of us being here and they, may help us. In some ways. So
have you had any experiences at this place?
Just a few
small ones, really.
Yeah,
nothing springs to mind. Really.
Well, you saw like the shadow.
Yeah, I mean just shadows, nothing big, no big.
Like the shadow walk across the room. So
yeah,
apparently the gentleman who lived here, who died here,
very tall.
Yeah, very very tall, like 7 feet something. Oh. He was very tall.
He was a 7-foot Hungarian, and apparently a very really nice guy.
So we won't talk about him too much because that tends to like.
We did when we found out who was here before, originally, just over a year ago, I think. We did a little bit of research, and I'm not going to mention his name, but we found out he was in the U.S. Air Force in the Second World War, and he was buried fairly local to here as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we were talking about him quite a lot because we were obviously interested. And then we did have a little bit of activity around then, which we think might have been him, because he heard his name. Someone's talking about me.
Right.
So anyway, so we stopped talking about him. We stopped.
Right. We won't. So anyway, moving on. We just had a few more things to talk about. We had places that as we mentioned before, we've traveled quite a lot. We've been out to the West Coast. I have family out there, so we got there. We road trip out there because we love our road trips. So one of the places
we love, Eureka Springs.
Eureka
Is that where you're going?
Yeah, we love Eureka Springs.
It's in Arkansas.
Okay.
It's got a really, really cool vibe.
It's a very oldie worldy. It's almost like sort of Scotland or something. It's like windy roads, trees everywhere, beautiful valley.
A bit New Orleans.
Yeah,
very
a bit of everything,
eclectic. Really, really cool vibe.
Yeah.
Just very artsy, very creative. So it was originally a sacred Indian site, Eureka Springs. It was considered by native tribes to belong to everyone because of the healing springs.
Wasn't this the place where the doctor was?
Right.
I think one of these hotels was the
Crescent Hotel. It's famous. Yeah, the Crescent Hotel. There's been tons of ghost stories and things on the
doctor
Crescent.
there, and he was experimenting on people, and not very nice.
So we've actually stayed at the Crescent. Didn't have anything happen there, but we did have an experience. Where we went, we went to a tour at
the Basin Hotel.
The Basin, Basin Park, which is down in the little town, and it's famously haunted as well.
Yes, it's very
not
haunted
quite as famously as the Crescent, but they have ghost tours at both places, and we've been to the one at Crescent. And then on the next visit, we went to the one at Basin Park, and it was kind of, not remarkable, really. We were both like, meh. We've seen this, didn't have any experiences. So we
went down to the basement. So the end of it, so there's this guy in like a gangster suit doing a talk. It was a pretty good talk, very, very professional, just telling us about all the different ghosts in this hotel. And at the end of this, we went down to the cellar of this hotel, the Basin Hotel, Basin Park.
Yeah, we got samples of whiskey and that sort of thing.
And that was sort of part of the deal, And I don't even like whiskey, but I had a little sip of that, tiny bit. And from there, we didn't do the cleansing ritual, which they actually did say, don't forget to do it.
Right,
we're like, of course we forgot again.
We forgot.
and this,
don't do what we do.
and this is the weird thing. I try and make this story quick, but the weird thing was we left there, and it was like, I think, was it a Friday night, Saturday night?
Mm-hmm. And we thought it would be.
We had a little bit of time left, and I was desperate to get a beer. I was just like so dry. And we sort of walked up the town, and there was this set of steps, like all sort of brightly coloured. I don't remember the name of the place. But there was a bar, and we went in this bar, and I don't know how many people were in there, 10, something like that. And they were all smoking weed in the pub. Not like I haven't got a problem with that.
This was before it was legal, though.
Right.
So it's kind of exclusive.
And I just wanted a beer, so I asked very politely for a beer. I can't remember my exact words or anything, but they asked to see my ID, which is, coming from England, you never get asked, especially if you look old like me. You got grey hair, you don't get asked.
Right.
But I was a bit annoyed. I probably wouldn't be now, but I was a bit annoyed. And
you didn't have your ID with you.
I didn't have my ID with me, and I sort of tried sort of like, well, you can just wave it. You can see I was joking. So, see how old I am, I'm not a teenager,
Yeah.
Anyway, they were adamant. They weren't, this guy was really adamant. I said, well, and anyway, so it sort of developed into a bit of a, and I think what might have happened is I might have taken on, because I feel that occasionally, if for whatever reason I can take something on that's not me, sort of like a masking type thing. And I'm very conscious of that, so I have to be a bit careful, because I know, looking back, that it has happened to me a couple of times. And I was, basically what I'm trying to say was I wasn't myself. And I
thought you were going to fight them.
Yeah, I'm a very, very peaceful person generally,
Goodness.
And, I just, I'm sort of embarrassed to say, but I was really, really sort of trying to goad this guy. And all his mates are sitting around looking at me like, who the hell is this bloke? He must have something, because he wouldn't be so confident, He must have thought I had a secret weapon or something,
Right.
Kung Fu Kid or something.
You went gangster.
But I wasn't.
That's what you did. You went gangster.
Yeah, I sort of took on this other character. And
anyway.
And even when I was doing it, I felt, this isn't me. I don't know where this is coming from. Right?
Anyway,
we didn't get a beer. We left, and I gave him a bit of abuse, and we left. And Janice is dragging me out at this stage. She's, come on, get out. And I hadn't had a drink at all. I was just annoyed. So then we went back down the street, and we said, well, maybe we can go back to the hotel we're staying in, which was called the Grand Central.
They had a little bar.
Yeah, and luckily they were
lower
still
level.
open. And there was a guy in there. He was totally different, really friendly. Oh, yeah, come in. And there was the owner of the hotel, this little elderly lady of Welsh descent. I remember that. And another lady who was the wife of Jerry Yester, who people who are into sort of older music would know. What was that band he was in? American. She's giggling. What do you...
No.
Oh, she's trying to think of a name.
No, I can't think. It'll come to me.
Loving Spoonful. He was in Loving Spoonful.
Anyway.
And I didn't know that at the
You
time.
digress again.
So yeah, I'm digressing. So basically, there's just a small bunch of us, and of course, we want to know about the ghosts because that's what's important to us. We go, have you got any ghosts? Because we had to sleep a night there anyway. And the owner of the hotel, this lady, she said. No, I think she said we had 8 or something. It was quite a large number, wasn't it?
Yeah, but she said, "Oh, don't worry, we've had
them all exercised.
We've had a cleansing." She didn't say that. We've had the place cleansed. There's no more spirits here.
And we just looked at each other like, yeah, right, okay. So that means they're still here if they want to be here, really, because I don't think they get rid of them.
No, they don't.
If they're there, they're there. They come and go.
Anyway, we spent just a nice evening. Ended up
in the bar, had
in the bar.
Good old chat. Went up to now this is where it gets really weird. So we go up to bed. First thing I remember is there's a big gap under the door. There's a really big gap. And the bed was almost right in front of the door. It was a strange room. And we were on the top floor.
This is a really old hotel. It's very historic.
Yeah, a beautiful hallway.
The original oldest hotel in Eureka Springs. The others are more iconic just because of the reputation. And this is it's in the older part, but it is one of the original structures that has survived.
But we kept hearing like an argument going on. There was it sounded like 2 women or 2 young girls and a guy, and there was something going on. There was doors opening and closing and angry voices.
And we were kind of at the point where we were gonna get up and just say something, and then it stopped.
Yeah, every time we got exasperated to that point, it would stop. Yeah, and then it started with banging and crashing, and we just thought they were doing repairs or something.
But it was 3 a.m.
It went.
The night.
Yeah, but it went on. It started at what time did we get in there? Sort of midnight-ish.
Right. No, it was 1.
We were in the bar quite late.
And then the argument ensued, or whatever that was.
Yeah, but we never saw who was arguing. It was just this big argument going on. And then the voice, the dogs are off now. So the voices sort of stopped at some point, I think. And it was just banging and crashing, and we couldn't tell whether it was coming from the roof above us, which was the flat roof.
The roof. Yeah.
Or to the side.
Well, yeah, but it sounded to me, it sounded like construction, banging on wood or metal, someone was up there, repairing some major thing, banging and crashing and pounding, and it just went on, and it would stop a little bit, and it would start back up again.
Yeah. And we didn't, we considered going down to the little desk and complaining, but we didn't think there'd be anyone there. Well, not complaining, but just sort of asking.
But there
pipe down a bit.
It was the very small front desk, and when we came up, no one was there. So we, it's not like you could go down to the front lobby and tell the concierge. Yeah. But because there was literally no one there. But it went on
all night, didn't it? You eventually got off to sleep. I think it was getting close to 5:30, something like that, before it finally stopped. So I had very little sleep, and in the morning I went down. And I think you were in the shower or something. So I went down to the little desk, and there was a different lady on there anyway. And I said, what was all that noise about last night? What was going on? I bet you've had a lot of complaints, And what noise? It was what do you mean, what noise? She knew nothing about it. No one had complained. And just weird.
Yeah.
Totally weird. And that's where I met Jerry yesterday. I met his wife the night before, but he'd been ill apparently. And he was at the bar when I was having this conversation with the receptionist with all his dogs. He had loads of dogs.
Huh.
So we were having this conversation, and he was fascinated by what's going on here? But no one else seemed to hear it. It's they couldn't have missed it. It was so loud.
It was the kind of noise that shakes.
Yeah.
Reverberations. And we couldn't figure out why in the world they would be doing.
Yeah, how inconsiderate that was.
Yeah, in the middle of the night.
Yeah, and to be honest, we didn't even think it. I didn't even though I'm into all this stuff, it never crossed my mind. This is the strange. It never crossed my mind. Oh, this might be sort of poltergeist type. No, there were builders on the roof, as far as I was concerned, but there weren't. You know, and it's just so strange. So what else? We're sort of my throat is so dry. I'm talking too much.
Yeah, so probably if we need to wrap up, we could tell about our last experience we had when we went to California. My daughter lives in Sacramento, and north of there is a little mining town called Grass Valley. And Mark sort of likes to go to places that have that Cornish mining heritage. So the Cornish miners came to America, and we sort of find these interesting little places.
Like knockers. This is where knockers comes from, because I'm sure you know this, but Tommy knockers, as you call them, they were knockers or knackers. And actually that comes back to what we were just talking about, really, with the banging.
Yeah.
Right.
Because that's used to hear in the mines, isn't it? So, that's where Tommy knockers comes from. But anyway, Grass Valley is a beautiful old town. It's sort of still got that heritage there. You still occasionally see sort of Cornish flags, it's like St. Piran. It's a black flag with a white cross on it, which is supposed to be like the lead ingot, I think. I think that's where it comes from. But anyway, so what was it called? The Holbrook Hotel. We went to the Holbrook Hotel. Beautiful, amazing bar, the most beautiful bar.
Kind of famously
big mirrors and just wonderful, lovely woodwork. And so we didn't. What we try to do if we go to an old place like this, or anywhere really, we try not to sort of ask the locals, the staff, whatever,
or even look it up online. We don't want to be influenced by anything that we read or hear.
So we didn't actually see anything at all there, did we? But basically, what happened was, I was sat I don't know what time was it, tea times, 5-ish? No,
because we had gone to dinner. Remember, it was my birthday. We went and had dinner, and then we came back and had our free drink at the bar.
Yeah. And we're sitting in this quite large bar area. There's hardly anyone about. There's a few people sort of removed from where we were.
I think a weeknight. I can look it up.
And I was just sat there with Janice. She was probably looking at her phone or something. And I just had this urge, which I've learned to sort of listen to. And when I was younger, I never would have done, but I had this urge, like, take a picture. And not in words, but just that urge. I've got to take a picture of a bar. So I picked up I should have sent you these, really. And I just snapped off a few quickly. Now, there was one guy sat at the bar, and he was looking at his phone. And when the pictures came out, and they're like within split seconds of each other, there's one where it's just him. And then the next one, there's this, what looks like, well, to us, it looks like sort of oldish guy with a cowboy hat on, like a big one.
But and only the top half.
Yeah, the top half of him. And he's sort of looking at us, and he's sort of passing the guy that sat there, the human that sat there. He's sort of passing him.
Yeah, he's sort of like superimposed on him, like between him and the camera.
And so the next morning, I spoke to one of the ladies on the desk, hotel manager, and I said, have you got any ghosts in this hotel? I'm sure you have, you know. And she said, yeah, we've got a cowboy ghost, and he's only seen from the waist up. So I showed her the photograph. I said, what, like this? She said, yeah, where did you get that? I said, I did it yesterday. So, it's just odd things like that. Now, the skeptics have looked at it and they sort of say, oh, that's double exposure, or it's this and it's that. It's like, well, but no, but.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing. A picture's never going to convince anyone.
No.
Right.
It's just.
It's a pretty cool picture.
That's the thing. It's a cool picture if you have the experience. And you get saying, you're like, okay, there's actually something in the picture. That's interesting. But pictures and video will never convince someone, especially someone who doesn't accept that this stuff is real.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but that is the way that
that's
goes.
That's life. Yeah. Yeah. So have you got anything else you want to add?
No. I just maybe reiterate, yourself, that when you see ghosts, it's not always at night. You've seen.
Oh no.
You saw the gray little girl at a doorbell.
Oh, yeah, I forgot that one.
Yeah. I mean, there's so
just
many.
A lot of these things, I mean, I know you know this, and I know all the listeners know this who are sort of familiar with stuff, but a lot of this stuff is not spectacular at all. It's just like tiny things that like, for the one she's talking about, I was just stood by the front window of this old property and just suddenly saw this it's like a sort of charcoal drawing, as I describe it. I've seen a few like that in my life, because I see different types. So I've seen like sort of cartoony type ghosts. They're like drawings, like lead pencil drawings, and they move. It move like a cartoon. And that's what this little girl was. And I'm pretty sure it was a little girl, and she was like, from like 100 years plus in the distance, behind, just by the way she seemed to be dressed. And she just ran across the road and faded into nothing. I mean, it's literally just ran across the road. So it was all over in, I don't know, seconds. But again, like I say, it's not spectacular. It's no big deal. It's like, yeah, another one.
Now, I wonder if somebody else would have seen that as Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was sort of historical area.
Yeah.
So
there is a lot of, actually, it's weirdly, there is a lot of Bigfoot activity around here. So we're told.
Right. Yeah.
Larry's seen stuff. Larry Wilson. We could mention that just before we sort of wrap up, if you want. We like to go walking a lot, and we've got the dogs, Now, this is going back a while with our other dog, Lisa. Unfortunately, she's passed now. But we were walking. There's like old railroad lines everywhere around here, and you can sort of spot them when you're driving because there's like a narrow range of woods. So you've got these tall trees either side of the track, and it sort of runs along the field. So they're quite isolated sometimes. They're just in the middle of the field, and there's a place in Springfield, and we quite often go walking over there. I haven't done for a long, long time, actually.
Right.
But when we went in there, and now we know there's nobody. There's certain areas where people do walk, and there's other areas which are a bit difficult to get to, and people don't bother with it. And we know there's no one in there. Mm-hmm. But you can walk quite a long distance along the old railroad track. Now, I was going through a phase of collecting the spikes, the railroad spikes, because they're all there. And I just collect them. I never know what to do with them. I got loads. Wow. So I had a little bag, like a rucksack type bag, and because I was going there for that purpose. And we walk along the railroad, and I sort of pick these things up. And we went right to the end. I mean, it's not that long. I don't know how long it is, but we get to the end, and then we come back. Oh, I've forgotten.
Yeah, you forgot.
I've forgotten the major piece. So when we walked into the opening of this, we sort of come off a busy road, sort of cross like a dual carriageway, and you go into this sort of fight your way in because it's not a regular path.
Right.
Really.
Yeah. We're not trespassing because it's public land. It was a former railway. They just, and it would be part of like a walking trail. They just haven't got there yet.
Yeah.
It's pretty rough. It's pretty rough terrain.
Some of them are tarmacked over, but this one wasn't.
This one is, it's
I don't
not
think
been done.
they ever will. But so first thing we noticed, now you saw this as well, didn't you?
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Right.
So when we go in there, over on my right side, there's a sudden, it's like we surprised something by appearing in that wood. And there was like this, and it was strange. I can't even describe it, but it was like a movement in the trees, and it was wide, it was high, so like, almost like a cloud, but like blackish.
My thought was deer. My initial thought when we saw it was like we scared some deer and they were running.
But it couldn't have been because
it would have been like they would have been flying.
They would have been like Santa's deer.
Right. It was high. Yeah.
Yeah. But at the time we saw it, we didn't sort of take that into account. Thought, maybe it's deer, But it was like almost like maybe like a flock of birds that suddenly went, but it wasn't birds.
It was way bigger than a flock.
Yeah.
I mean, it was solid. It wasn't like separate things. It was like maybe 2 or 3 separate things, but big things. Yeah. Moving fast.
So that happened, and then we just sort of another weird thing. I don't know what we like I said, we thought it may have been deer or something, but
right.
Later we
were
like, no, it's not deer.
It can't have been because they would have been flying deer. It wouldn't have made sense.
So we do our thing. We walk down this track. It's like, I don't know, half an hour to the end and then back again. So I'm walking along, and occasionally I'm finding these pins, and I'm just these spikes, putting them in my bag.
Right.
And then we come back the other way, and we've cleared this path. It's quite a clear path, and we've cleared it. And there, right in the middle, it's a spike just left there. Now,
we would have tripped over it.
Yeah. I mean there's no way that I would have missed it, and it didn't fall out of the bag. There's no way I would have missed it. So it was like, well, I think there's two possible explanations. Maybe there was a person in there who saw us and was sort of laying low, saw what we were doing, collecting spikes,
Right.
and thought, I'm going to surprise them. I'm going to leave one on my track,
Right. It could have been, but we didn't see any other people, didn't see any cars. I mean, hardly anyone knows about this spot.
Somebody, I don't know who it was, somebody said, well, maybe it was Bigfoot gifted.
Right,
because there is a lot of that goes on around
and then
here.
when you consider the thing that we saw right before that with the big brown blurry things, it could have been. I mean, it's on the edge of, a kind of metropolitan area, but it's on the very edge.
But I don't think that makes any difference now. I mean, I used to think they were confined to like woods and forests and so on. Well, this was woods, obviously, but
a
it was
stretch of
very,
woods.
very small. And I don't think it matters because I think they're everywhere in certain places.
I don't think they're actual physical apes. I think there's something else.
No, nor do I. Nor do I.
Right.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just can't see that.
They're in too many places that they couldn't possibly survive unnoticed to be physical apes.
Yeah.
Right.
They seem to be sort of coming in from somewhere, some other. I hate this. Yeah, I know it's lazy in that dimension.
Right.
They seem to just pop in and then pop out.
Right.
And there could be some undiscovered apes, maybe in the deep Pacific Northwest or in the Himalayas or something like that. Probably not in like Illinois or New Jersey.
No, probably not. Not where it's mostly flat.
Well, you could tell the audience about when you met that guy that you went to school with and he told you about his experience.
Actually, let's save that for a Patreon because we're out of time.
Oh, okay.
Let's save that.
Yeah.
Mark, where can people get your books?
Amazon, basically, and what's the big chain here? We got, I forget, not Waterstones, is it? What's it called? I always get confused with the British one.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Waterstones.
We don't really have any.
The major chain you have.
Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I believe they're there.
Do
Amazon.
you have
Amazon for sure?
Yeah.
Do you have
the Kindle version and the print version are both on Amazon.
Do you have?
Yeah, there's several. There's I also contributed to Josh's Fairy Films book.
Oh, cool.
And I actually now what did I do in there? Twin Peaks. I did an essay on Twin Peaks.
Nice.
The folklore of the forest.
What do you have a website or anything?
Unfortunately not.
Something got to work on that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And your podcast is still up.
Yeah, it's still up. I'm planning on eventually getting back to it when I get the facilities working again. It's Cuckoo Town podcast. It basically covers like high strangeness, but where it meets, a lot of it is just high strangeness, but some of it is art and culture, counterculture.
But again, Larry's podcast. What's the name of that?
That's
what episode?
Will Hill. I think it's episode 4 or something.
Hill. If anyone wants to check up on that, it's really interesting stuff.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you both.
Thanks, Seriah.
Okay, thank you, Seriah.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure, yeah. Thank you.
I want to take a moment here to thank all of my Patreons. I can't do this without you, so thank you for supporting the show. And know that every positive thing that comes out of this show is partially because of you. I want to give a special shout out to all my patrons who are pledging $10 or more a month. Greg Ross, John Blackburn, Madeline J., Marty Garza, Matt in Delaware, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, Tim, Andrew Nichols, Matthew Sproul, Marthartha, Midnight Review Presents, Christine, a blue second-gen MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Abby Allen, Patricia Giaquinta, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Ann Witowski, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Billuminati, Bright Rectangle, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, Land of the Crazy and Communicable, Corey Nelson, Diane B., MTK, Eric Citron, Eric Todd, History and Coffee, J. Otto Bullitt, Jack Huntington, James Lindsay, Jim and Sophie, John Mattingly, John Bracken, Jonathan Frost, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Shurek, Cool Kitty, Kristen L., Laser Printer Jam, Lauren McLean, Linda from Michigan, Linz Jackson K., MJ Armstrong, Mark Shoemaker, Mark Brady, Paul Jeffries, Perry Peters, Philosopher of Mirrors, Riker and Stark, Ron Dupre, Sam Sharon, Sasha McHale, Schmooples, Devourer of Mortal Souls, Stacy Sherwood, Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, Thunderboy, Tyler Glimstead, Baruch K., Victoria, Vincent Trewell, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Annabelle Smith, Caroline Walker, TDT Skunkworks, Colin Karras, Craig Sagastumi, and Matthew Brown. Thank you all so very, very much for your support. I want to welcome a few new patrons to the show this week. Matthew Bolton, Connie Martin, Ron Dupre, and Johnny Van Orman. Welcome, and I hope you enjoy the extra content. And there will be a Patreon segment for this particular show. We kept going for quite a while, actually. And you get all the shows early. You get them commercial free. You get extra content with almost every show and special bonuses here and there as things go. And it's only $3 a month, which I have never raised since I started doing the Patreon stuff a couple of years in. So for $3, you get a lot of extra content. So if you like the show, you may like that even more. Just go to wheredidtheroadgo.com and click on the big Patreon link, and that will take you to where you can sign up. You can also just buy individual shows if you just want to hear one particular Patreon segment. You can do that as well. And I'll see you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.